This movie has a lot of charm to it. I mean, good God, did they put so much passion into this project? Once again, I don't remember this movie going this hard. This is my second time watching this movie. Last time I saw it was when it first released, which was in 2008. This is the second DC animated movie not based on an animated series. To summarize the flick, it takes place in the 60s, at the end of the Korean War, and an alien invasion is on its way. But on Earth, people refuse to accept costumed heroes as anything but vigilantes. So in the end, everyone has to put aside their differences to work together and protect humanity. When it comes to the Martian Manhunter, Hal Jordan, or The Flash, normally I don't mind if those characters barely get any screen time, but this movie made me care more for those characters than my favorites from the League like Batman or Superman. Heck, Superman doesn't even fight in the war. He decided to take on the invaders by himself and got jumped. He lost as fast as he was introduced, like the Lightbringer. Every scene in this movie is worth rewatching, but if I had to choose 3 scenes that are my favorite, I'd go with the Martian Manhunter watching TV and morphing into a character from the show that he's watching. That's a very creative way to show what's on his mind. My second favorite scene is when the government tries to capture the Flash. They set up a trap for him in the middle of the city streets, and their attempts appeared to work. They caught him, but he just barely managed to slip away from them in a very creative way. I wonder what would have happened if the CW Flash was in this situation. The third best scene for me would be when the Martian Manhunter, aka John Jones, visits the Batcave. Batman is deeply focused on his work, facing his monitors. Then John enters the cave by phasing through the wall behind Batman. And not once does Batman even bother to turn around and see who's in the Batcave behind him. John just starts confessing who he is, literally tells him that he's an alien and that he was hoping to stay in their planet but had a change of heart after witnessing mostly terrible people. So he tells him, "I'm leaving now," and Batman's like,
"Bye, Felicia."
Well, he says like, "Have a safe trip," while remaining focused on his work. Then as John walks away, Batman says, "Some of us can't just leave." The dude barely spoke in this scene, yet his only lines and actions spoke so goddamn louder. Louder than the Martian Manhunter himself. When it comes to these reviews, I like to mention the pros and cons of the product, but honestly, I can't think of any cons for this movie. I thought it was going to be boring, but it was far from it. I thought I wouldn't care for its story because there are a handful of Justice League War movies out there, but this was even more interesting than its fight scenes, and the fight scenes were amazing. The dialogue, the voice acting, the music, all stellar. I would have complained about Aquaman showing up after the fight was over, but he was taking care of Superman, so I can't blame him for not being there. Plus, Aquaman later states that his people only fight if their ocean's under attack. I forgot where he said that though, but it makes sense. I think that if this movie was made in live action, and it hit theaters instead of Snyder's Justice League, this would have easily been regarded as the best DC superhero live action film of all time. Right now, the best hero team-up movie we have is The Avengers, the first one. And if you think about it, it has a similar premise and execution with this movie. The first half of the movie introduces every main character, they have to learn to work together and stop fighting each other, especially since there's an alien invasion on its way. And by the way, this movie came out first since it released in 2008, whereas The Avengers released in 2012. So it's possible that the creators of that movie saw this animated flick and was like, "Damn, we gotta do something like this with Marvel's version of the Justice League." I could be wrong, but they're just a little too similar. But the beauty about the Justice League New Frontier is that it takes place in the 60s, so we get to see what the world was like during that era. Like the vehicles, the fashion, the technology, the hairstyles. There's a lot of charm to that era. But most importantly, the heroes wear a costume from that era, and it really shows. I like Superman's 60s costume. Doesn't it look better than his regular one with red underwear? I think so. Batman's costume looks funny as hell though. This is when he used to wear little gloves and that derpy mask. It's also when his comics used to cost like a nickel. Still though, it's great to see him wearing this costume to keep up with their times. When Batman first appears in this movie, he busts in to take down a cult that was about to sacrifice a boy, and the way he takes everyone down It's like that scene in Snyder's Justice League. Now, I'm starting to think that 2 directors were paying too much attention to this movie. Again, I could be wrong, but you know what? All 3 things that seemed too similar were all greatly executed, so no complaints there whatsoever. Wonder Woman in this adaptation looks a little chunky. I don't know much about Diana, aka Wonder Woman, but was she thick in the 60s? Or are they trying to make her look like buff without adding any details?
The rebels, how did they die?
I only disarmed them. I left their guns in a clearing, and then I let the women out of their cages.
They did this? And you just stood by and watched?
I gave them freedom and a chance for justice. You know, the American way.
You know what's awesome though? Lucy Lawless voiced Wonder Woman here. That was Xena the Warrior Princess. All the voice actors for this movie did like a fantastic ass job, but this was a neat little Easter egg to me, I'd say. The cover art for the movie represents its art style. It kind of looks like the Fallout illustrations, doesn't it? Overall, you should check this movie out. It aged better than ever. I'm glad I set out to make a swift critique on the DC animated movies universe, because I barely remember seeing this movie when it first came out, and maybe I was just too focused on Smallville since that show was on its 8th season at that point. That was a season when Doomsday was the new antagonist. I was hooked. The next DC animated movie I'll be talking about is Batman Gotham Knight. So with that said, that's it for the video. I'll be making more of these swift critiques on the rest of the DC animated movies since it's time I get to it. Be sure to leave a like if you enjoyed this video and subscribe to know when the next videos are out. I also stream here on YouTube at least a couple times a week, so tune into those so we can kick it virtually and enjoy some of the best retro games of my generation. And if you want to support the channel and see your name at the end of every new video, be sure to join the channel membership or my Patreon. Both will give you access to early videos, updates, and lots of new art since I also like drawing stories to give you even more entertainment. Anyways, I'll see you on the next video, and remember to have an awesome day.